always choose happiness. Easier said than done, isn't it? So before we choose happiness in our lives, we need to understand what is happiness. See, happiness is an opinion, and every single one of us have a different opinion of what happiness is. Everyone has an opinion. Your family will have an opinion of what happiness is. Your friends will have an opinion. Society will have an opinion. Social media will have an opinion. And then you will have an opinion. And it's your opinion of happiness that what really matters. That's what we need to follow. And understand what our opinion of happiness really is. You need to ask yourselves the question of who am I? What are my likes and dislikes? Without them and my beliefs, I wouldn't be me. What makes you you? My fundamental beliefs. In other words, what are my core values? And my story starts in 2015, age 22, when I joined the police force. But before I tell you about my journey, I want to take you back before the police, about who I was, what my core values were. If I summed it up with four things, my core values: creativity, always wanted to create things, always had big ideas, new ideas for so many things in my life. Freedom, loved having the freedom to do what I wanted when I wanted, obviously within reason. Challenge, always love to be challenged both professionally and personally. Always want to grow as a person, always want to be better. And spontaneity, I'm such a spontaneous person. I didn't like having a diary full of stuff each week, knowing what my day was going to look like every single day. Love that element of spontaneity, and it was important for my happiness. So these were the core values of me. So you'd be surprised, age 22 years old, that I joined the police force, because freedom and spontaneity doesn't exactly make you think join the police. And the problem is I didn't go with my core values. I didn't understand what they were. So I went against them. Now, I didn't go against them on purpose. I went against them because I didn't know what they were. Age 20, 21, 22, I didn't ask myself, what are my core values? What makes me me? Although I knew what I was like, I didn't actually sit down and write them out. But that was such an important thing to do. Because if I had done that, I would have realized that being a police officer really wasn't for me. But instead, I followed other people's ideas of happiness, other people's ideas of success. See, my family were either police or military. So you imagine I already had that pressure of this is going to be a good career. This is what happiness is. Because other people around me were telling me that that's what it was. See, I allowed other people to write my story, allowed other people to create my story, rather than writing my own story and what I wanted for my life. And you won't be surprised that within these 5 years, I was deeply unhappy. My mental health suffered dramatically throughout these 5 years. But no wonder when you're not living an aligned life. This decision to join the police, that wasn't, looking back, that wasn't my decision subconsciously. I just went with the flow. And from early on, this negativity of the police force started seeping into my life. I was witnessing death almost immediately. I was seeing the worst in people day in and day out. Not many people are positive when they see the police force. I was getting abused left, right, and center. I was dealing with death left, right, and center. I was telling wives that their husbands had died. I was telling parents that their children had died. I was dealing with these dead bodies day in, day out. I heard someone say recently that there's no such thing as work-life balance, and I couldn't agree more. This idea that we look at and we talk about work-life balance, it's it's not right. It's false. Instead, we need to look at the idea of life balance because it's life. It's all life. Look how much we work each day, every day for how long? Well, not every day, but within a week and months. So we need to understand that our job affects our life. Of course it does. See, I was witnessing negativity within the police force, and I was witnessing it through what I was seeing and dealing with. But I was also witnessing negativity through the culture of the police force. Because if anybody here can tell me that they know an optimistic police officer, please get in touch. I would love to see, love to hear from them. But they are negative, unfortunately, because they see the worst in people. So when I was cutting down someone who'd hung themselves from the garage, told his wife that he had taken his own life, told his 14-year-old son that he had taken his own life. Within 30 minutes, I could be home doing the dishes. Not exactly work-life balance, is it? And people say that it's important to compartmentalize things, but from my experience, being a police officer, it's unique. And I think it's actually quite dangerous to compartmentalize things. So I lost faith in humanity, unfortunately. I lost my creativity. That once creative person, I lost it. Because my mind was filled up with traumas of the past, traumas of the present. I was thinking about life and death decisions that I'd made. I would turn on the news and see something that had happened, and I would think, I dealt with that person not that long ago. My mind was too busy being filled with all these things. I lost my creativity. There's no room for creativity in my mind. And I lost myself, who I was as a person. Those core values I told you about before, I lost every single one of them. I lost who I was. I looked in the mirror and I didn't like the person looking back at me. I was ashamed of the person looking back at me. And it all came to the point where I was dealing with so many negative things in my life. I just didn't want to live anymore. I hated my life. I couldn't see a way out. I felt trapped, felt stuck in a job I hated, trapped in a life. I couldn't see a future. And I thought, how will I go on? So on a day in July 2018, I decided that I would take my own life. I didn't want to live any longer. Now looking back, I realized it wasn't that I didn't want to live any longer. It was just that I didn't want to live that life any longer. But at the time, I didn't see it like that. So I wanted to take my own life. On the day that I made all the plans to do it, and on the day I was going to, I was saved. I was saved by Louis because I looked down and Louis looked back up at me and he gave me a lick. He showed me that day that someone needed me. Someone cared for me. Someone showed me that love that I needed to see in that moment. I thought to myself, how could I leave you? Could I give you that love and attention that I could? And he saved me that day. And I'm here today because of Louis. Now, I didn't get better. I just didn't hit rock bottom again like that. And I would describe myself as a functioning depressive. See, I was asleep on my days off all the time, barely living any form of life. And that was from 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 years old. And you should be making most of your life in your 20s. There I was sleeping on my days off. And when I was on shift, sleep and then go to work, sleep and then go to work. That was how my life looked. Not much of a life. But I had an awakening. My awakening came on my last ever shift, or what would be my last ever shift. On my last shift, I witnessed a young male take his own life, and I was there for him as he took his last breaths in this world. I was unable to help, unable to save him. I just had to be there for him. 5 hours later, my colleague had a heart attack on shift and died. I remember the paramedics giving him CPR as I watched on, unable to help, unable to save him. My colleague had 29 years service. One year left until retirement. This retirement idea that so many people in society had told me would be success and happy, would bring happiness in your life. At the end of your career, you could finish your career about 50 odd. You could get retirement, get a good pension. It wasn't guaranteed. He'd worked 29 years of his life for that. See, life isn't guaranteed. You can't put off living a happy life for tomorrow, next year, the year after. Because he talked to me about the plans for the future, the plans with his wife, the traveling they were going to do, all these exciting plans in the future. That future never came to reality. And it was at that point when I realized I needed to focus on my happiness. My mental health deteriorated again at that point, and it manifested itself in a physical injury in my knee. See, I tore my ACL after that last shift in my knee. And I didn't tear my ACL by falling or a sporting accident. My mind tore my ACL because my mind told me, you need to stop. And for the next 5 months, I struggled to walk. So I had to take time away from the police. Now, it was during this time away, when I looked back at my 5 years, that timeline that you see up there, I looked back at it, but I realized it looked actually very different. Instead, it looked a wee bit more like this. Traumatic event after traumatic event after traumatic event. Looking back, I realized all of them were traumatic in different ways, and all of them were unhealed trauma. Because how can you heal from trauma when you're going from one traumatic event to the next? How can you heal from any of that trauma? And that last shift was a perfect example of that. So I needed to make changes in my life, and I had to focus on my happiness and what my happiness, my present happiness looked like. So when I looked myself in the mirror, I saw something negative, bitter, untrusting, pessimistic. The negative words and descriptive words go on. That wasn't who I was. You look at the person who I said I was initially, compared to now, that's a completely different person. And that person I looked in the mirror, I was ashamed of. I didn't want to be that person. But what could I do to change it? I took what I call now the 7 steps to happiness. I looked at my life. I asked myself difficult questions, which is difficult to do when you're not happy in your life. I asked myself, who did I want to be? Who did I want to become? What did I want to do in my life? And I came up with these 7 steps that I would love to share with you today. So hopefully some of you will take some inspiration from some of these steps. The first one, this is to do with our emotions and mental health. There's 3 stages we need to go through. Notice it, accept it, and heal it. See, we need to notice our emotions changing. I noticed that I was sad, noticed that I was unhappy, but I didn't get to this next stage, the accepted stage. I hadn't accepted it to myself that I really needed help. I didn't accept it to myself. I needed to talk about my mental health. And research has shown that people who accept their emotions, both positive and negative, are generally happier than people who suppress their emotions. That's because people who accept their emotions can work through and process them, rather than people who suppress their emotions, who remain in a negative state of mind. See, I was remaining in that negative state of mind until I decided I needed help. I needed to talk. And I was able to move on to this next stage, the heal it stage. And the healing journey will look different to every single one of us here. But the point with these 3 stages is that we can't go from one to the next until we complete the one we're on. And it's difficult. And there's going to be ups and downs throughout. And that's just the way life is sometimes. Number 2, so I spoke about core values already, but I need to understand my core values. We all need to understand our core values, but also we need to then live by them. We need to be brave and say, every decision I make in my life is going to be aligned to these core values. Because if you can do that, you're living an aligned life. If you can do that, you're living a happier life. So ask yourself, what are your core values? Who are you as a person? But then make sure that every decision you make is aligned to them. The next one, sort your circle out. Say that you are the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with. So make sure the people you spend your time with are people you admire, people you respect. They're people that will help you when you need help and who will celebrate your wins when you need to be celebrated. See, I was surrounding myself with negatively minded people. And when you do that, you suffer. If they're negatively minded, of course you're going to suffer. Research has shown that if your friend is happy, that increases your happiness by 15%. So we can see that surrounding yourself with the right people really matters. And unfortunately, I needed to cut out some people in my life for my happiness. And it's a difficult thing to do, but we need to put ourselves first. We need to put our happiness first in our lives. Cut out things that make you unhappy. Number 4. Guess what? It's hard to know what makes us happy. Sometimes you can't just exactly say, oh, this is what makes me happy. They're happy days, I'll just do that. It's hard. We don't necessarily know everything that makes us happy. And to understand what makes us happy, I say, well, let's understand what makes us unhappy, because we tend to know what makes us unhappy in our lives. And I use the analogy of going to a restaurant. And it's a wee bit out there, but bear with me. You go to a restaurant and the waitress or the waiter gives you the menu, and they might say, do you know what you want? And you'd be like, oh, I don't know. There's a few options here that I like that makes me happy. But if they ask you, do you have any allergies? And if you do, you say, well, I have this. You know what makes you unhappy, so you remove it from your life. So that's no longer an option. That saves space for you to understand what makes you happy. In my life, the thing that made me unhappiest at that time was my career. So I quit my job. And when I did that, I then saw that it was replaced by something else. It was replaced by a relationship I was in at the time. So I left that. So by process of elimination, by getting rid of the things that make you unhappy, you'll be left with things that make you happy. By process of elimination, remove the things that make you unhappy. And you'll also be left with space in your life to go find out new things about you, to go try new things to see if they make you happy. The process of elimination, let's remove things that make you unhappy first. And let's let go of resentment and anger that you hold from previous things or people or whatever it may be, because it doesn't serve you and it only affects you. See, when I was going through my healing journey, I was having a lot of PTSD symptoms, and I've been since diagnosed with PTSD. But when we're going through all these symptoms, my doctor did some tests and they said, oh, there might be something wrong with your liver. We have to do more tests. Now, before those tests, I had a silent counseling session. And during that silent counseling session, she looked at the different meridian points in my body. And he said, there's built up negative energy in your liver. And that represented anger and resentment. See, I had so much anger to the police, how they had failed to help me in my time of need. I had so much resentment in myself for wasting 5 years of my life in a job that I hated. See, when we did this process of letting go, I went back to the doctors a few weeks later, did some more tests, and they said, oh, your liver is absolutely fine. See, whether we know it or not, whether it's visible or invisible, whether it's physical or mental. Holding on to resentment and anger will affect you in some form or another. We may not know it, but trust me, it will affect you. So let's hold on to things. Right, let's get rid of things that you hold on to. Number 6, be an optimist. I'd rather be an optimist and wrong than a pessimist and right. So for so long in my life in the police, I was a pessimist. I viewed the world negatively, viewed the world differently. But research has shown that not only being more optimistic is good for your mental health, but it's also good for your physical health. See, it lowers the risk of high blood pressure, lowers the risk of stroke, heart attacks, cardiovascular diseases, lowers the risk of death by just being more optimistic. Now, I know we can't be an optimist every single minute of every single day. That's not how life works, and I get that. But if we can be more optimistic than pessimistic, we're on the right track. I need to be more optimistic in my life. The last one, I need to make me a priority. Because no one will make your happiness more of a priority than you will. So say no to the things that don't align. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I'll repeat that. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Don't do the things that you don't want to do. There's plenty that we have to do, like the dishes and the housework, that they have to be done no matter what. But there's so many things in our life, going out with friends, whatever it may be. If you don't want to do that, don't. Put you a priority in your life. Make you a priority. See, since I've made myself a priority in my life, my happiness has increased twofold. I've brought so many more things have been brought into my life because I've changed that view. I've dared to dream again, been creative again. Because see, the once dreamer had stopped dreaming. My experience in the police had led me astray, but I found myself again. I found my path to happiness, and I dared to dream again. Thank you.